According to the clock back there, I've got forever to do this. I'm early, everything. It's, it's always going to be 8:11 or something or whatever's on the clock back there. So I'm good for time today. I may be bad for getting, closing at the wrong time, but I'll be good for starting anyway. Hope everybody's doing well this morning. So, and certainly happy Father's Day to all you fathers out there and the people that made you be that. That pretty much handles most people from there. Any particular things that we need to have in our minds as we go to our Heavenly Father in prayer this morning? We'll mention my oldest brother was taken to the hospital last night. He suffers from dementia, so we're not really sure what's the current case with him. Dehydration for one thing, whatever. Carrie and I and the kids will be headed out that direction to see him and a couple of my brothers next weekend, so I will not be here next weekend. Either I'll find a substitute or I'll record something. We'll see what works out. Substitutes are hard to come by these days, so if somebody wants to volunteer, let me know. You'll join me with prayer then. Glorious Heavenly Father, it is always a pleasure and a privilege for us to be able to approach your throne through prayer. It is very much appreciated that we have this opportunity to be able to speak to you, to share our thoughts, our concerns, our appreciation, to just have conversations with you through prayer. And we ask that we use that avenue more often than we even do today. At this point, we're certainly mindful of this opportunity for us to study your word, and we ask that all of us will gain much from it, all of us will participate and not just observe, that we will take the lessons that you're sharing about here I am and apply it to our lives. We're mindful of those that are a part of this congregation that cannot be with us here today. We have a very long, as we usually do, list in our prayer list, and we're mindful of each of them, and we know that there are probably others that are not on that list that you're aware of. In all cases, we ask that you do, according to your will, what's best for them, to bring them comfort, to give them strength, and to bring healing. We ask you to be with your church around the world today as it's your day, that there be freedom to be able to worship you, that there be growth in your church, that there be edification and encouragement, and all of it, that there be glory shared with you. We pray all this in your Son's name. Amen. All right, so we're studying Here I Am, and we'll do a quick, let me turn this on, that would help probably. A quick review of where we were. We're talking about the phrase, Here I Am. It's found in the Bible some more than 20 times in the Bible. The vast majority, and by that I mean all but except once, is in the Old Testament, and we'll try to hit most all of them in this quarter. And it's spoken by some 17 different men in different situations from that. We're going to look at each one of those. Last week we looked at Abraham and Isaac, and we talked a little bit about the background. We know that God made a covenant with Abram. That was his name at the time the covenant was first put into place. We know that that covenant gave a promise of different things. It gave him a promise of the promised land that would go to his children, the ones that were to come down the road. It would be sojourners in it for a while, but ultimately they would be given that land by God. He promised Abram that he was going to be able to be the seed of a great nation, and beyond that, that he was going to be such that he would be a blessing to all nations through him. And we know that ultimately is something that's satisfied through Christ from that perspective. And as a part of all that, Abram was asked to go to the land of Canaan, what would ultimately be that promised land from that, and he did that. He showed faithfulness in following God's direction to do that. We know that both Abram and Sarai had faith, that's their original names, but they also were somewhat impatient, and they wanted to enable God's promise, not just wait for him to do it the way that he said he was with regards to a seed. So it started out with, well, maybe my servant's going to be that. Well, maybe my handmaid can have a kid. To ultimately God doing it his way, because God wanted to make it very clear he was fulfilling that promise. He made it clear because he allowed a woman well past any childbearing years and a man well past those types of things to have a child. And it was clear that was God's hand and not man's hands involved in that. And Isaac was that promised heir. We then looked at the specific instance of Abraham and Isaac, where God called upon Abraham to offer Isaac as a sacrifice. The Bible tells us that God was testing Abraham. We talked about the fact that testing is not the same thing as tempting. Testing was an ability for both God and for Abraham to evaluate his faithfulness. How far would his faithfulness take him? How much did he put into God? And we know from the Scripture when he finished it all out, the Scripture later says that Abraham believed still in the promise that Isaac was the seed that was going to produce all that promises, to the point that he even believed God would bring him back from the dead if needed. So Abraham was obedient to the commandment to sacrifice his son all the way up to the time he was going to do it. Isaac, well, Isaac questioned his dad, where is the sacrifice? Where is the thing we're going to sacrifice from that? But he obeyed his father. And as far as we can tell, all the way up to the point of being sacrificed from that. God was satisfied with the faithfulness of Abraham. He knew in his heart that Abraham would have pulled it off. He would have sacrificed his son. But there was no need to take it that far. And so he stopped the process. So throughout that, we have God calling out to Abraham. And Abraham saying those words, "Here I am." And then God saying, "Okay, this is what I want you to do." We have the situation where Isaac calls out to Abraham, "Where are you?" Or it says Abraham, and he says, "Here I am," when he wants to know what's going on, where that sacrifice is. And we have it when Abraham is about to sacrifice Isaac, when once again God, his angel, calls out to him, and he again answers, "Here I am." And God says you don't have to go through with it. So we have three cases of "here I am" covered with Abraham and Isaac. This week we're going to talk about brothers, Jacob and Esau, who also will be able to say those words, both of them in different situations. So let's look at their background, same as we wanted to do with Abraham. We can't just jump into the situation and when they're doing it. We want to make sure everybody has the full picture of these two men that were going to be a part of the story. So let's go back in Genesis to chapter 25, and we'll walk our way through verses 21 through 28. So it'll be Genesis 25, 21 through 28. So it starts out, "Now Isaac pleaded with the Lord for his wife, because she was barren. And the Lord granted his plea, and Rebekah his wife conceived." Now, God had promised that there was going to be seed, and Isaac was the only one. He certainly had to have some heirs in order for that to happen. But God's still, in control. He's not suddenly populating with one person. They're not rabbits from that regard. So Isaac, much like Abraham in some ways, he's pleading for his wife. And the Lord, God grants that, and she is pregnant from that. Verse 22, "But the children struggled together within her, and she said, 'If all is well, why am I like this?' So she went to inquire of the Lord." So she, at this point, as far as we know, has no idea that there are two babies inside of her. She just knows there's a lot of turmoil going on inside of her. It doesn't seem normal. Of course, she's never been pregnant before either. But something's going on from the way of things happening inside of her from that. And she wants to know why. If this is the way it's supposed to go, if my husband, as was his father, is going to be the seed of great nation and bless all the nations of the world, why am I like this situation? But she goes to the right person to ask the question, doesn't she? She inquires of the Lord. She doesn't ask a midwife, "Is this normal? Is something wrong?" She doesn't go to her mother and say, "Well, Mom, was it like this when you had me?" Instead, she goes to God, because God was the one that had made the promises, and God's the one that responded, and they felt that he had responded to Isaac's pleas for her to not be barren anymore. And the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb. Two people shall be separated from your body. One people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger." Those would be really interesting words to get. I think it's always interesting when people, at least when they don't have any history of twins in their family, suddenly go in and the doctor says, "Hey, you're not expecting one, you're expecting two." Let alone if it was 3, 4, how the numbers would go from there. From that. So even that had to be a surprise for Rebekah. And then the grandiose discussion of these two kids from there. There are two, babies inside of her at this point, and God's talking to her about nations. Nations in there, that they're both going to have their own nations from that. They're going to come out of your body. And one will be stronger than the other. And in deference to the way that society worked, Normally, the older would be the one in charge. They would be the one, as we'll talk about later, to inherit more. They would be the one expected to carry on things, to be the next stage of that family lineage from that. But in this case, God says, in this case, the older shall serve the younger. Now, it's something to keep in our back of our minds as we go into the story that we're going to cover today. Rebecca has heard this. It's kind of like when Mary's told some things about Jesus, and she stores them away in her head. She knows some stuff, she's observed some stuff, she's been told some stuff, and she stores those things away for later on when Jesus grows up. Rebecca probably does somewhat the same thing. We'll find that maybe she's not as sincere in how she executes as Mary might have been, but nonetheless, she tries to take that and see that as the promise of what God's saying and sees to trying to carry it out somewhat from there. Moving on. So when her days were fulfilled for her to give birth, indeed there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red. He was like a hairy garment all over. So they called his name Esau. Afterward, his brother came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob. So what did that mean? What did Jacob mean as a name? It meant supplanter. Supplanter. And that'll come into play later on. They always seem to have figured out those names from that. But this one actually came from his actions there as he came out of holding on to his brother's heels. So the brothers grew. And Esau was a skillful hunter, a man to the field. But Jacob was a mild man, dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game. But Rebekah loved Jacob. That's usually a bad sign. When parents showed favoritism between them, it's not usually a good sign. There's going to be problems involved in that. And we probably all know in families who that's the way it worked. Yeah, my wife is smiling and grinning stuff. Her family worked very much that way. Father had a favorite, mom had a favorite, both of the boys and the girls from that, and it was very clear who was the favorite, and that did cause issues from it throughout things. And this will certainly go through it. Why were they favorites? Well, partly, you've got the fact that, what did Esau do? All the things that Isaac liked, right? He was a hunter. He brought in game. He fed him stuff he liked, that taste of wild game being prepared from that. On the other hand, Rebekah loved Jacob. What do they say about Jacob? Jacob was a mild man. He dwelled in the tents. He hung around mom. He was a mama's boy. Pretty much is what we can get out of that. And so there was a general affinity to the two of them each of the specific parents involved. But again, not going to work out well from them from that. So the next time we come along with that falls right into it. The boys are growing up now. We don't know a lot about their growing up years from that. But we have a situation where we're going to first see that supplanting someone going on. And we're going to kind of see the personalities of the two sons from that. So Genesis 25, we'll go through 29 through 34. Now Jacob cooked a stew. That seems kind of odd. He's not really the one to do those kind of things, but he cooked a stew. And Esau came in from the field, and he was weary. And Esau said to Jacob, "Please feed me with that same red stew, for I am weary." Therefore his name was called Edom. His name was Edom, which means red, right? I don't know that it was because he was weary and he liked red stew, but it was all the reds that you put together from that perspective. But Jacob said to him, "Sell me your birthright as of this day." Now that's quite the bargain, isn't it? You want some of my soup here from that? Give me your birthright in exchange for that. Right now, I'm not, you got to promise to me now. I'm not going to give it to you and then you renege on me. We're going to make the agreement before you get any of this stew that you're smelling and wanting so bad. Now Esau should have said, "What? Well, that's ridiculous. My birthright for a little, a big giant bowl of your stew? I mean, it might be okay. I make better food because Dad likes it better." But instead, Esau said, "Look, I am about to die. So what is this birthright to me?" Now, was he really going to die, or is he Mr. Dramatic? He's Mr. Over-dramatic, right? I'm weary, I'm tired, I got to eat, so I don't care enough. He's very flippant with his birthright. And so he says, "Well, it doesn't matter to me." And Jacob sees this whole thing as an opportunity. And he's the lawyer type. "All right," Jacob says, "then swear to me as of this day. Let's make sure this is going to be binding." So he swore to him, and sold his birthright to Jacob. Once you've sworn that, and done that to the Lord, it is a binding agreement. That's where it was. They didn't write out contracts. They were verbal in those days for the most part. And if you swore to it, then God and everybody else expected you to live up with it. That was a done deal. The birthright was now gone from Esau. And Jacob gave Esau bread and stew of lentils, and then he ate and drank, arose, and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Esau didn't put value in it. He didn't care for it. He just diminished it entirely. He despised it, didn't care, didn't show value to it from that. And Jacob has planned for it. The supplanting has already come into play. I'm going to take your place as the eldest as it comes to the birthright. Now, what was the birthright? There's not a lot spoken. I think birthright comes up, but the specifics of it aren't necessarily spelled out in the law from it, but we do see it discussed as a part of the law in Deuteronomy chapter 21, verses 15 through 7. In this case, it's talking about a man who has children by two wives, one that he likes and one that he doesn't really like. You could say maybe it's the, Rachel and Leah kind of situation. And you could have seen it if that's the way it played out there. But, as it happened with Leah, who was the firstborn, well, the less favored wife is the one that has the firstborn. And then the argument comes, well, who gets the rights? That, and what is it? So, reading in Deuteronomy 21, 15 through 17. If a man has two wives, one loved and the other unloved, and they have borne him children, both the loved and the unloved, and if the firstborn son is of her who is unloved, then it shall be, on the day he bequeaths his possessions to his sons, don't bequeath them to your daughters, they don't inherit, that he must not bestow firstborn status on the son of the loved wife in preference to the son of the unloved, the true firstborn. But he shall acknowledge the son of the unloved wife as the firstborn by doing what? What is that birthright? By giving him a double portion of all that he has. For he is the beginning of his strength, the right of the firstborn is his. Yeah, guy?
Isaac was told.
Was Isaac told what?
Not told whether he was told or not, but somehow or another he knew it.
Yeah, I think that
God told him or what?
Yeah, I don't know if God spoke to him or all that happened was Rebekah told him from that. I mean, she was the one told, and we don't know how that happens, right? This is one of the few cases where we have God speaking, or at least indication God spoke directly to a matriarch versus a patriarch during that stage. But she says that she was told. We have the assumption from all of it that he knew that was the case. But in this case, he didn't do like his father. He wasn't trying to follow through on it too much, was he? Now, that's my favorite son. That's what I still want to do, is we'll see it play out. I'm going to do all I can to see my favorite son get it. I don't care what God said about it from that regard. We are told. That's what we're going to look at today. Yeah, absolutely. So it is told from that. But in this case, the first thing is less important in some ways than the second part of it. In this case, it's about the material possessions. And I say less so because if we really look at how this plays out, does he even actually end up with it? Does he ever really get that birthright? I'm not convinced that he ever really does. Right? But what was it? It was to get a double portion. So when you looked at all the stuff and you looked at the fact that as far as we know, Isaac had only the two sons, that's what we know, then how did his possessions break down? Well, his possessions were supposed to go, 2/3 of that would go to his oldest son, would have gone to Esau, and only 1/3 would have gone to Jacob. And now, because of the selling of the birthright, is reversed. Now, in reality, like I said, because of what's going to happen with the other part of it, I don't know that that's the way it played out with the birthright. The second part was far more important, in God's eyes anyway. And that's what we'll be looking at today. But that's what the birthright is. So that brings us up to where we want to study today, which is in the 27th chapter of Genesis. So we're going to look at pretty much the whole chapter there, or at least try to get through it all, if I monitor my time well enough from that. So let's read the first 4 verses. Now it came to pass when Isaac was old, and his eyes were so dim that he could not see, that he called Esau his older son and said to him, "My son." And he answered him, "Here I am." All right, we've got our words again. All right, the reason we're looking at this passage from that. Then he said, behold, now I'm old, and I do not know the day of my death. Who of us does? Now, therefore, please take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and make me savory food, such as I love, and bring it to me that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die. So we've got an instance here again. The question's asked. So is there a question? Again, not really a question, right? Isaac calls out to his son, knowing that it's Esau that's there, and Esau understands it's calling out for him. So Isaac asks Esau, and Esau responds to him with, here I am, right? Why did Isaac call out to him? He wanted to get his attention. He wanted to ask him to go and kill some game, bring it back, cook it, and give that to him for food. What was the purpose of doing that? He said to him, it is intended so that I can give you a blessing. Put me in the mood for that. Give me the cheeriness. Help me remind what I'm doing here, and maybe even sort of, help assuage my mind for the fact, again, that God said it shouldn't be you anymore, it should be your brother. But I don't want it to be that way, so let's try to put me in a pleasant mood for this whole thing, and maybe I'll forget about what God said about, and you're going to get the blessing. That's a different thing than the birthright. The birthright was a physical kind of thing. It was purely what was going to happen with the father's possessions. Who was going to get how much of those things? A blessing is what the father was going to say and pray for, basically, for what the future would be of their sons. And again, it was the elder would be the one that would get more of that, would get the leadership out of those kind of things, direct things in that future from that. So continuing on in Genesis 27. Now Rebekah was listening. All right, she's eavesdropping. Let's be honest about it. She's listening on a conversation that is not hers. And when Isaac spoke to Esau, his son, and Esau went to the field to hunt game and to bring it. So he went to do what his dad asked him to do. He's being very obedient at this point. But what happens? Well, we've got the favoritism going on. Maybe we have Rebekah remembering the promise. We can't say what her motivations completely are, but we find then in verse 6, so Rebekah spoke to Jacob, her son, not their son, her son, because that's her favored one, saying, indeed, I heard your father speak to Esau, your brother. Listen, I was eavesdropping. I heard your dad talking to your brother. I was making sure. I'm looking out for you. Been looking out for you all along. I knew this was coming someday. Saying, bring me game and make savory food for me that I may eat it and bless you in the presence of the Lord before my death. Now, therefore, my son, obey my voice according to what I command you. So do what I tell you to do. Don't think about it. Don't make a decision about it. Don't decide if it's right or wrong. You do what your mother says. Mother knows best. Not father knows best. Mother knows best in this case. Go to the flock and bring me from there 2 choice kids of the goats. And I will make savory food from them for your father, such as he loves. Does she know what he likes? Oh, absolutely she knows what he likes. She may not make it exactly like Esau does, but she knows pretty much what goes into it and what's going to please him from that, particularly where he is in life and what he may have diminished, taste buds from that for certain aspects. So it doesn't have to be exactly right from that. So she's going to make what he loves. And then she tells him, then you will take it to your father that he may eat it and he may bless you before his death. Is he going to bless you because you brought the best stew to him? Or is he going to bless you because he thinks you're Esau? Well, clearly, he's going to think you're Esau from that. So she is setting up a whole scheme here. Again, is her motivation purely out of favoritism? Is her motivation somewhat that, again, much like Abraham and Sarah, she's going to manipulate things to do what God said is going to do? No way of knowing exactly what the case is. I think pretty likely, though, the favoritism is the main thing that's going on. That's who she likes, she loves, and she wants it to come out for him from that. Going on. And Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, look, Esau, my brother, is a hairy man, and I'm a smooth-skinned man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be a deceiver to him, and I shall bring a curse on myself and not a blessing. Now, you notice Jacob doesn't say, well, this is wrong, Mom. This is just wrong in every sense of the word. I'm not going to be a party to this thing. I'm not going to take advantage of my brother. I'm certainly not going to take advantage of my dad. We're just not going to go through with that. That's not what he says. He just says, hey, Mom, I understand your scheme, but here's a hole in it. Here's why I don't think it'll work. If you feel, I'm pretty, smooth skinned. My brother, he's known as the hairy one. How in the world will he pass it off if I was to be touched from that? And if I get caught, I'm going to be worse off than just getting that secondary blessing that the second son gets. Dad could give me a curse. And the future's really going to look bad from that. So his mother goes, you're right, let's not do this. No, that's not her response, is it? 13, but his mother said to him, let your curse be on me, my son. Again, I will favor you so much, I'll take the hit for you. Only obey my voice, do what I say, and go get them for me. And he went out and got them and brought them to his mother, and his mother made savory food such as his father loved. So the plot's going on. But, he has brought up to mind, whether Rebekah's realized or not, he has brought up something that they've got to be concerned about to pull off this ruse, to totally fool Isaac. So we move on. Then Rebekah took the choice clothes of her elder son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. Why? You could smell like him, because Esau couldn't see well anymore. Isaac couldn't see well anymore. It wasn't like he'd say, that's his clothes, I recognize him, but it's the smell. And we'll see that coming up later. That's the smell of him. And perhaps there's feel to it. He probably wore different kind of clothes than his brother did, because based on what they did and how they went about life from that. Well, then she did. In 16, she says, and she put the skins of the kids of the goats on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. So she's used those goats in two different ways. To fake out that it's wild game, it's not. It's their own flock of goats that they've taken him from. But she's also going to use those skins. That's how hairy the man was. You wonder how hairy he was? You're going to put the skin of a goat on there, and then that'll pass off. That's what Esau felt like. So he's a hairy man. So she's going to pull this off. You've given me a possible problem we could have with your dad. I've got the solution for it. We're going to strap these things on you. You're going to be going in there. If you could see, it'd look really odd. You've got these things kind of, tied around you, and you're wearing skins on your body and all that kind of stuff, and wearing clothes that don't fit you and don't smell like you and all that kind of business. And then she gave him the savory food and the bread which she had prepared into the hand of her son Jacob. Everything's set now. It's up to Jacob to pull it off. Can he pull off the ruse that his mother has done all the preparation for? But he's got to carry it out. So picking up in 18, we go. So he went to his father and said, my father. And he said, oh my goodness, there's those words again. Here I am. Who are you, my son? Jacob said to his father, I'm Jacob. No, he doesn't. Jacob lies. Not only is he pulling the ruse, but he out and out lies to him. He says, I am Esau, your firstborn. And I have done just as you told me. I have done what you said, and it isn't me. That ought to be the fact of the matter. Please arise, sit and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me. Now, Isaac's not easily fooled. He's still got a few things that he wants to challenge him on. He says, but Isaac said to his son, how is it that you found it so quickly, my son? I barely gave you this. You've had to go get it. You've had to slaughter it. You've had to prepare it food and cook it all up, and you suddenly show up. It hasn't been that long since I told you. How in the world could that happen? Well, Jacob either is a quick thinker, or he has quick reactions, or he's planned it out with his mother, expecting that thing. And he said, because the Lord your God brought it to me. Now he's brought God into the mix. He said, God's done this for you. That's why I'm here so quickly. God's done this. That's really interesting. Then Isaac said to Jacob, please come near, that I may feel you, my son, whether you really are my son Esau or not. So Jacob went near to Isaac, his father, and he felt him and said, the voice is Jacob's, but the hands are the hands of Esau. Can't fool the voice. There's no way. He wasn't he wasn't going to get on any shows as an impersonator of other people's voices. Jacob couldn't pull that one off. I don't even know if he attempted to do that. I assume he tried. He tried to do something, but his father was not fooled in that respect. But he let everything else overrule what his ears heard. Yeah, guys.
There's two things that Jacob did to try to identify Esau.
Yeah.
That was one way you said both of them.
Yeah. He was not going to be He was very cautious, particularly, like I say, because it happened so quickly. It seemed so unlikely that he could have returned so fast from that. I suspect that, in the deal, he might have had some of an inkling. What if Jacob, God said that Jacob was going to want to be overtaking it from that. We don't know what all went on through his head, Isaac's head, when he was doing the challenges from that. But he certainly had questions about it. But they had thought through those things. And given his limited capabilities at that point, his eyesight, his feel, what he had at his disposal to determine whether or not it was his son or not, they were able to take advantage of all those things. To where he comes to the conclusion, even though you sound like Jacob, because you're hairy, and Jacob's nowhere near hairy. He's a smooth man. And you know what? You smell like him, all those kind of things from that, then I know that it must be Esau. And we'll go forward with this thing. So who asked the question this time? Jacob asked the question. He went to my father. He was pretending to be Isaac. Not Isaac. He pretended to be Esau when he talked to Isaac. He called out to his father, why? To get his attention so he could give him the food his mother prepared. All for the purposes of intending to steal Esau's blessing as the firstborn and as Isaac's favored child. So, is this a good here I am? Is this a good scenario for that to fall in? No, it's a very negative one in comparison to ones we looked at last week. In this case, it's all part of a scheme, a lie, a way to defraud his father from that. So we move on. And he did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands, or like a goat kid's fur skin, right? So he blessed him. Then he said, "Are you really my son Esau?" He's got one more deal. You're going to be honest with me. Are you really Esau before I do this? Because I can't turn this back and do it differently. So I'm going to trust you to be honest with me. Are you really my son Esau? Jacob had another opportunity to back out of this thing. But instead, Jacob said, I am. He knew he wasn't. He knew what that would mean, both for him and for his brother from that. But he said, I am. Isaac kind of resigns himself to it and says, bring it near to me, and I will eat of my son's game so that my soul may bless you. So he brought it near to him, and he ate, and he brought him wine, and he drank. And then his father Isaac said to him, come near now and kiss me, my son. So now he's gone ahead with it. Again, he's challenged it. He wanted to be honest, but Jacob's the supplanter. He's living up to his name, not just holding the heel of his brother as he's born, but as he carries out things from that. So now it's time. I've eaten. Come near and kiss me, my son, and we'll move forward with what this was all about to begin with. And he came near and kissed him, and he smelled the smell of his clothing. Again, test that out. He's still a little wary of this thing. Is this really who it is from that? Well, got those clothing on. Like I said, that's the reason for it. He smells like Esau from that. I've gone through all these things. That just seems an odd thing that it sounds like Jacob, but everything else checks out. And so he blessed him and said, surely the smell of my son is like the smell of a field which the Lord has blessed. Therefore may God give you of the dew of heaven, of the fatness of the earth, and plenty of grain and wine. Let peoples serve you and nations bow down to you. Be master over your brethren, be over your brother, and let your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be those who bless you. There's nothing more really that's going to be on that. He wants him to prosper. He wants him to have great wealth. That's what he talks about. You get all the fatness of the earth, plenty of grain, plenty of wine. Get you in a position of prominence. People are going to serve you. Nations will bow down to you. And you will be the master of this family, as would normally be what you'd expect out of the oldest child. They're going to be the one that's going to be in charge of the family. But now, let your brother's sons bow down to you. There is only but one son otherwise. He thinks it's going to be Jacob bowing down to Esau, but we know it's the opposite. And cursed be everyone that curses you, and blessed those who bless you. Well, the cat's out of the bag. The blessing's been given now. Jacob's gotten. The ruse was successful. And really, he can't even curse him now because he said he'd be cursed himself, because he's done that as a part of the blessing. Cursed be everyone who curses you. So there's no way to curse him after the fact of giving this blessing to him. Now it happened, as soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, and Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, that Esau, his brother, came in from his hunting. He also had made savory food and brought it to his father, and said to his father, "Let my father arise and eat of his son's game, that your soul may bless me." Esau comes in, totally oblivious to what's just happened. He has no idea what's happened. Apparently, Jacob is cleaning off the dishes and taking them out. There's no smell of those things at all there. He has no idea that's happening. He's saying, "I'm just done what my dad asked me to do. I'm here to get my blessing. The other part of me being the eldest, I'm going to get this one now, so let's go ahead and you eat my food. Let's get on with this blessing from it. I'm excited. I'm out there. I couldn't wait to get this hunting done and successful, make the food for us to go on." And now we go, and his father Isaac said to him, "Who are you?" He's confused. Wait a minute. I just blessed somebody. He said, "I'm your son, your firstborn Esau." Dad's losing it here. What is he doing asking me? He sent me out. I come back. He knows my voice. He knows how I am. He knows I'm doing what he said to do. Why is he asking me who I am? Then Isaac trembled exceedingly and said, "Who? Where's the one who hunted game and brought it to me? I ate all of it before you came, and I blessed him, and indeed he shall be blessed." So at this point, Isaac doesn't even necessarily recognize it's Jacob, even though he knew it was that voice. He's saying, "Who is it? Who was it that came here? Are you playing a game with me? Because I've already blessed the person who brought the game into me. I ate all of that. I blessed him, and he will have the blessing because he's been given it. There's nothing I can do. I can't take that back. So it's going to happen the way that I laid it out, according to God's will, of course." When Esau heard the words of his father, he cried with an exceedingly great and bitter cry and said to his father, "Bless me also, my father." He's desperate now. He knows what's happened, and it has cut him to the quick. I was stupid. I gave up my birthright, so I don't get a bunch of your property. This is what I was looking forward to. This is what we've talked about. This is what I get to being the oldest child, and now you don't have that for me anymore. But he said, "Your brother came with deceit." He lied to me. He misled me, and he has taken away your blessing. And Esau said, "Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has supplanted me these 2 times. Now, he supplanted him the first time, but whose fault is that one? That one is totally Esau's fault. Yes, Jacob took an opportunity, but Esau could have turned it down. Right? He really wasn't starving. He didn't absolutely have to have a bowl of lentils, like that was that hearty of a meal anyway. But instead, he gave it up. But in Esau's mind, particularly after this, he's been supplanted. It's gotten taken from him both times. It's been unfair to me twice now from that. He took away my birthright, and now look, he has taken away my blessing. And he said, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" How would he have reserved a blessing from you? He thought you'd already gotten your blessing. So how would he have reserved one for you? Well, hopefully he reserved one somewhere. And Isaac answered and said to Esau, "Indeed, I have made him your master, and all his brethren I have given to him as servants. With grain and wine I have sustained him. What shall I now do for you, my son?" He's gotten everything. He's going to have all the prosperity. He's going to be the one to rule everything. He's going to be over you as well from that. What's left to give you from that? And Esau said to his father, "Have you only one blessing, my father? Do you have anything to give me? Bless me also, O my father." And Esau lifted up his voice and just wept. It's hard to see a guy like that who's probably that rugged type, the one that's out there, hunting all the time, a man's man, and he's weeping uncontrollably because he's lost his blessing along with his birthright now from that. Then Isaac his father answered and said to him, "Behold, your dwelling shall be of the fatness of the earth and of the dew of heaven from above. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother." Well, that doesn't sound very good, does it? But that's the reality. He'd already given the other blessing that said he was that Jacob would be the master. And it shall come to pass that when you become restless, that you shall break his yoke from your neck. You shall not be under his control completely all the time. You'll do that and run. Not him personally, but his descendants from that. Yeah, guy.
I was thinking by thy sword, what does that imply?
That implies that he's going to have more of a fighting to do things to get his return, whereas the fatness of everything's coming to Jacob. Doesn't have to necessarily work at it. He's going to be blessed, as we see really in his life. He gets a lot of things without having to, to fight off people. But for Esau, which his family is going to be the Edomites. They are a warring kind of people. To take over stuff, to get stuff, they fought for it. You go by the sword to get what they get mostly. They own a mountain, for instance, not as well for crops, so they have to do other things. So that's kind of where he's going to get it that way, by force, more than he's going to be blessed by. So you've given all the blessing of the earth to give prosperity from the earth itself to Jacob. How is he going to get his? It's going to have to come a different way, by battle. All right, whipping through, because that's my alarms from this. You can't watch the clock, you're all off. So Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father blessed him, and Esau said in his heart, the days of mourning for my father are at hand, then I will kill my brother Jacob. And the words of Esau, our older son, were told to Rebekah. She wasn't over-listening. She wasn't eavesdropping this time. So she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said to him, surely your brother Esau comforts himself concerning you by intending to kill you. I mean, does this come as a shock? I don't know that would come as a shock that he's going to react that way. She should have saw this one coming, but she hasn't really prepared for that. She does pretty well with it, though, because she says, now, therefore, my son, obey my voice, arise, flee to my brother Laban in Haran, and stay with him a few days until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger turns away from you, and he forgets what you've done to him. Will he ever forget? I mean, is that something you're going to forget? Seriously, does Jacob believe that, oh yeah, I figure, about a week or two, I should be fine. I'll be back. Yeah, it'll be like old times. He won't even remember Dad died, let alone what Dad gave me. Yeah, that's kind of stupid the way that works out. But she said, then I will send and bring you from here. So why should I be bereaved also of you both in one day? Why are both of you in one day? Well, how's the second one going to die? He's going to kill you? I guess we'll have to kill him because he killed you. I guess that's what she indicates. So she tells Isaac then, I am weary of my life because of the daughters of Heth. If Jacob takes a wife of the daughters of Heth, like those who are the daughters of the land, what good will my life be to me? So she comes up with, I think probably in her mind, a valid one, actually. This one isn't necessarily a lie. She's worried about who Jacob marries, whether he marries within the family and the people they're with, or the aliens that they're around. So I think that a ruse here is probably somewhat genuine. It's certainly well-timed to take care of getting Jacob out of there, but that's how it goes down. So what do we have in our case from that? We know that God's the one that determines destiny. In Romans 9, 10 through 13, it talks about Rebekah having conceived by one man, and it says, it was told her, the older shall serve the younger. And it is written, Jacob I have loved, but Esau I have hated. That's not found in Genesis. That's found in Malachi, where he says to them about Israel, now the nation, and Edom, the nation of Esau, is what he talks about when he says, yet Jacob I have loved, but Esau I have hated. And he talks about, I've laid waste his mountains. Mount Seir was one of those mountains, and his heritage for the jackals of the wilderness. Ultimately, that's how things come down, and God treated it that way. Does that mean that God loved one from that? Is unrighteousness with God? Does he care about somebody more than another? Did he love Jacob more because it's just right out of the deal from that? But he told Moses, I will have mercy on whomever I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whomever I will have compassion. So it's not of him who wills, nor of him who runs, but it is of God who shows the mercy. He brought up Pharaoh to show power, to show his name out there in the earth. So he'll have mercy on whom he wills, and with whom he wills, his will he hardens. Well, he says, I know how you work from that. And so I will use that to my advantage. Did that mean he was mistreating Esau? No. Ultimately, if we go on with it, in Hebrews 11:20, it tells us, by faith Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. They were both blessed. They both had nations. Yeah.
It's interesting, in verse 44, he says, I'll tarry with him a few days. That's what Jacob, Rebekah is telling Jacob. It seems like it would take a little bit longer, and it
And
does.
it did.
It did.
It took quite a lot longer.
Now, his brother was much more amenable to him. Did he go back then and did he go back and go, you know, by the way, now Esau, I do have the birthright. So you've got all Dad's stuff. 2/3 of it's mine. Like I said, the birthright never played out, did it? He got it, but he didn't. He didn't actually fulfill it from that. But no, it wouldn't logically do that, and it didn't logically from that. They were able to get along and hug at the end of that, but there was always wariness between them from that. So that one's a little different than the stories we looked at, the story we looked at last week. Looking ahead, we will look at Joseph and Jacob, whether it's me by recording or somebody else in person. We'll look at them next week as we move through all the other people in the Bible who said, "Here I am." All right. Thanks for listening. We'll look forward to it. The verses there for people who want to do it, all in Genesis if you want those copied down or take a picture of them if you want to look at them during the week. That will be the basis of it. Thank you.